Welcome back, everyone, to the European VC podcast. Today, I have a good friend, Sergey Jakimov from LongeVC on the podcast again. He has been here before for a deep dive on longevity and how they think on a thesis basis, but they have now finished up their first fund, investing out of their first fund, and are ready with the next one. They have just done first close, so congratulations, Sergey.
This was their finest hour.
Tear down this wall.
It's more than just an alliance. This is a union of values.
Let's start acting.
From first time to seasoned investors, the EUVC syndicate is not just about capital. Get involved, co-lead deals, share insights, bring in great people, and help shape the pipeline with us. Visit eu.vc/syndicate to learn more.
This show is not investment advice, and the hosts of this episode may be invested in the funds and companies featured.
Thank you for having us. Thank you for having me back. It's a pleasure to see you again and to hear from you again.
I'm desperately trying to live longer, so I gotta digest all the content I can about this.
That's a noble goal, although I hate to spoil it, but the best way to live longer is just not doing stupid things that science has proven to shorten your life. That's pretty much it, right? So you don't really need gene therapy straight away. You just need healthy living. That being said, so with that piece of wisdom, I'm happy to guide you through the deck on LongeVC. Look, so I'm Sergey. I'm one of the managing partners, one of the founding partners for LongeVC 1 and LongeVC 2. And LongeVC is really the fund that we say impacts lives through longevity and health investing. In reality, we're one of those VCs who only invest based on potential patient outcomes. So in biotech investing, interestingly enough, if you invest based on patient outcomes, the multiplier that comes on your capital is almost a byproduct of you doing a good job, right? So patient outcomes in our industry is the key. Now, we do define longevity in a very pragmatic way as a team, and we started doing so with Fund 1 in 2021, and we're now going into Fund 2. Nothing has changed ideologically. So we really look at it as a multidisciplinary field. It's very much an intersection between biotech, AI, less traditional, regenerative biotech, more traditional, disease-specific biotech, AI engineering, and a bunch of other spheres working on combating age-related diseases in a disease-modifying way and prolonging health span, right? So increasing the amount of healthy years that we can live. Now, I'll actually start with the metrics straight away because these I think seem to be important for the audience that will be listening. So the first fund is vintage 2021. It currently sits at around 3x, actually more now, of MOIC. It was $25 million, give or take 21 million euros or so, with a 30% to GP commitment. So we actually contributed 30% of that fund as managing partners. We've reviewed around 2,500 deals for the first fund, and I'll give you a statistic in a second. And we've invested in 20. As of now, we do not have any write-offs. The actual amount of pharma deals across the portfolio and the value of pharma deals across the portfolio of Fund 1 is over $3 billion in signed commitments with Big Pharma from our portfolio companies. So it's going pretty well. The first fund was really created around two unfair competitive advantages that we had as a team. Right. And the first one was new access. So we really had the opportunity to tap into these major research organizations that were working on the problems of aging biology, but also on the emerging tech in age-related diseases. So think Stanford's, Harvard's, Yale's, Berkeley's of the world. And because where does
that access come from?
Oh, our track record with the field. So I've been a founder since 22. So I've built multiple companies in biotech. I helped others build companies and raise funding in biotech and age-related diseases. One of my partners, Gary, has been deploying his own capital made in tech in longevity since 2016. Long before the fund was created, he was one of the first Czech investors into a company called Insilico Medicine, which has since created the industry for AI for drug discovery and is now a unicorn. So close to 2 billion in valuation. So we basically knew all the right places that spin out meaningful tech in age-related diseases. And this is how we defined our focus as a fund, right? So we went after disease-modifying treatments in age-related diseases, so looking of how these groups are pairing aging biology with kind of traditional biotech approach in terms of clinical trials, in terms of communicating with the regulator, getting FDA approvals, et cetera. So we never really invested in fighting aging. You cannot really invest in fighting aging as of now. It's not a disease. So it is not provable clinically as of yet. So we also grew up with the KOLs, so the key opinion leaders in this emerging field. So we were able to put together one of the most recognized, if not the most recognized, scientific advisory boards out there, which I will talk about in a second. But if you look at statistics of the fund one, so we looked at roughly, 2,500 companies. 1,200 passed into the initial evaluation, and then, through the funnel of due diligence, we basically left with 20, which gives us a roughly 0.8% conversion on the success rate of how much we intake and how much we end up investing in. The whole fund one was built around the notion of building the most stellar due diligence capacity the field can experience. So we're pretty proud of that one, and I think there's zero write-off. The result also speaks to itself. Now, we also do outperform our vintage 2021 peers pretty significantly. So we're actually in the top quartile, according to PitchBook, on the current portfolio multiplier. And it is an official portfolio multiplier. Unofficially, we do have a couple of unicorns brewing in the portfolio already, essentially 3 years of investing into 3.5 years of investing of Fund 2, which is now fully done. So we do feel quite good about the performance of Fund 1. Now we're moving the whole ideology of ours really into Fund 2, where Fund 2 is a very logical continuation of Fund 1. We're still doing early to mid-stage investing. That's our bread and butter. This is where we're best at in terms of evaluating science and sourcing the best allocations in the industry. So we are looking to raise 120 million for our Fund 2. Essentially same portfolio construction logic. We will be deploying larger tickets because looking at the best winners and the biggest winners in Fund 1 portfolio, we could have deployed 4 times, 5 times more money into those companies. And, we're looking to raise a 120 mil for a 10-year fund, classic 220 structure, where 5 years would be deploying capital and 5 years would be managing the portfolio.
Talk a bit about growing the firm from 25 million to 120 million fund size. Just what have been the changes you've made to the team? How do you think it impacts? So you're deploying basically the same strategy, but with larger tickets. How do you think that will impact the competitiveness of the investments that you do? Those types of things.
So interestingly enough, Fund 1 was not a very traditional setup. It was very, very much over-engineered from the very beginning. The internal deal team is now 7 people. The advisory board right now sits at 14 people, essentially top scientists from key institutions. That we do not count the external expert network, and we do not count the fellowship program, which is a separate program that we run with PhD candidates from Columbia, Berkeley, and Stanford. So really, the whole team was initially built to run a much larger fund than we had in Fund 1, because the goal was to build the best due diligence capacity and sourcing capacity that the longevity fund, early stage longevity fund could have. The interesting thing is the first fund actually spent every single dime of management fees it has collected, plus a bit more of our own money actually on building the team. So throughout 3 years of investing, the managing partners were not paid. So everything was spent on the team resource. And that was basically our statement to the field of this is how it should be done. Right, so this is how the due diligence excellence should be built out, and there is no penny to be spared really, because otherwise it makes absolutely no sense to invest in biotech to begin with, right? If you do not have this mindset of contributing and investing long term from the very beginning. So yeah, that was so we're now basically transferring all the over-engineered resource into Fund 2. We're actually adding some scientific advisory board members on the senior pharma side, so people who have essentially gotten drugs from clinical trials to market approval with major pharmas, but otherwise it's the same resource, which is more than enough. And then again, I mean, if you think about longevity biotech, people tend to think about longevity interventions. It's not really true. The multitude of longevity targets, it kind of stems, all around the spectrum, autoimmune diseases to your kind of traditional endocrine or oncological disorders. So it's a 1+ trillion market opportunity right there. The thing about the age-related diseases is that for us as a longevity investor, the ultimate quest for a longevity drug basically means discovering a disease-modifying mechanism of some sort that will be transferable across several age-related disease areas, right? So we're essentially looking at age-related diseases, but we're looking at them through the lens of a merge between advancements in aging biology on the one hand, and then traditional biotech approach to be able to certify something and get something to the market on the other hand. So, huge market. If anyone tells you that the market for longevity interventions is really small, they're just not very educated in the topic to begin with. Now, the reason why we're talking about this is because we're in a very interesting moment where pharma is facing an unprecedented revenue erosion actually through loss of exclusivity. So big pharma companies are now sitting on quite a bit of cash liquidity pools that we see on the M&A side. But on the other hand, they're looking at their key patents expiring. So there are a number of big pharma companies that are very active now on the M&A front just to replenish their 10 to 20 year horizon IP pipelines. And we see it in our portfolio companies as well. The partnership window for big pharma companies with startup has moved significantly. So right now we see acquisitions, so over $1 billion worth acquisitions happening at the preclinical stage, for example, or partnerships happening at the preclinical stage, which was never the case before. And, even if you take oncology as an example, big pharma is only responsible for 14 first-in-class drugs in oncology developed in-house, right? Everything else that big pharma sells in oncology is actually acquired from smaller biotechs. Pharma is great at selling. Pharma is very bad at developing something internally. So for patients that are undergoing the oncology treatment, chances are that the drug that is being administered in their specific disease condition was once funded, was found and funded by a venture capitalist in an early stage and only then acquired by big pharma to end up in a patient. So talking about the team here briefly, the second fund has a set of 4 partners where we kind of come from a very diverse background of and kind of multitude of experiences. So Gary, I already mentioned, he has been investing in the space as a business angel since 2016. Myself being a founder, Aurora coming kind of exclusively from the wealth management background originally, and Ilya coming from finance. We kind of, provide a fairly complete picture of running a fund and conducting efficient investor relations activities. So it has been a pretty well-rounded up team. Now, the scientific advisory board is the one that is most interesting here. It's chaired by Alex, who is the head of our advisory board, and he's the CEO and founder of Insilico Medicine. So Alex has pretty much single-handedly with Insilico created the field of AI for drug discovery. And then it's comprised from Mike Levitt, Nobel Prize winner in chemistry out of Stanford, to very specific KOLs in their specific realms, right? Like Tom Brando, for example, the #1 stem cell guy out there in the academic space, runs the UCLA stem cell research, or Vadim Gladyshev, who is running the largest aging-focused lab in Harvard, and the list goes on, right? So all of these individuals are basically, yeah.
Can you talk a bit about how you use these? Because it's always, when you look at an LP on a deck and there's a bunch of advisors, there's always,
Okay.
well,
Are these
what
just
is that
faces?
structure here?
Are these just faces, or these are actually real people that are working? In our case, we've assembled our advisory board literally within a week because we knew all of these people personally. And the core activity of the advisory board is actually participating in due diligence. So scientific advisory board is plugged into essentially senior, more mature stages of due diligence on a specific deal. And we really cannot invest internally. We have this policy that we do not invest until we do have a positive scientific advisory board opinion, 2 positive scientific advisory board member opinions on the specific deal, on the core science of the specific deal. So due diligence is one. The second one is pipeline development, right? So all of these individuals are strategically situated in the most prestigious places out there when it comes to research and spinning out age-related disease tech and fundamental tech such, AI for drug discovery or sequencing or whatever that is. So they do refer us into deals, and they do play a vital role in getting us into allocations as a group, right? And then as I mentioned, investment decisions. So we don't really invest until a scientific advisory board, 2 scientific advisory board members actually okay the core science, right? So they do work with our deal team pretty heavily, sometimes on a daily basis, actually. And what is the most important? We're also relying on the ecosystem that we've created. So we're not just a fund, really. We've worked on perfecting the infrastructure that we have and the infrastructure that the longevity industry can use, really, through a bunch of other branches, where the 2 most important ones are the Health and Longevity Medicine Society, which we helped to create and we funded, which is now the largest society of longevity physicians globally, with their own protocols, etc. So this is the major hub for longevity interventions when they end up in people and patients. Right, and this is how we keep track of what's happening on the longevity medicine side. Now, our other nonprofit arm, which we as partners created, is the Longevity Science Foundation. So that is a US-based foundation that actually provides non-dilutive grants to very early stage fundamental research groups working on fundamental research in aging, and this is our ultimate tool of supporting the industry, of course, and we're not using fund money to do that, we're using our own money to do that, but to support the early research in the industry, but also see what's brewing, right? So what is out there in the very early science pipeline that will be investable in the next 5 years or so, right? And it's very important for us to map the landscape as well. So very briefly, why we really invest? Well, we invest in order to find disease-modifying treatments to age-related diseases, because we believe that the longevity and aging should be tackled as a puzzle, right? So piece by piece, and these pieces are age-related diseases that we need to figure out. Where do we invest and what we're looking for? Well, the second fund is going to invest in 2 major areas, which is therapeutics, so interventions in regenerative medicine and in age-related diseases. Again, disease-modifying mandate, and preferably a combination of aging biology, kind of a traditional biotech approach. And our second large pillar will be AI and drug discovery platforms. And that is something where we had a lot of success in Fund 1. One of our most pharma deal-heavy companies are there in the platform space. So we're going to continue that trend as well. So when it comes to the entry and exit strategy, for us, it's really simple. So we invest early to mid stage, which means that in the early stage, we really deploy 30% of the ticket upfront and then reserve 70% for follow-on. For mid stage, we do roughly a 50-50 split, and we are looking at these potential X8, X10 type of exits for us on average, just because it's a kind of a right thing to do for us when evaluating these early stage deals. Looking at the first fund, we see that some of these deals that we will be exiting next year will be capable of returning the whole fund multiple times. Some of the deals will be more modest with, a 4x, 5x return. So we are kind of, pulling this experience together. And this is how the whole kind of early to mid stage strategy for us plays out. We are looking to do roughly 23 companies in the portfolio of the second fund. So it doesn't really deviate from the bread and butter of the first fund and what we do best. So far, we've invested and sourced from pretty much the best names out there, from Beiersdorf, Sequoia, Danaher, you name it, to the top academic institutions such as Harvard, University of Chicago, Yale. And we've invested in spin-outs from Berkeley. We've invested in spin-outs from the lab that created CRISPR in Berkeley. And we do take pride in mostly participating in the most interesting allocations out there. So we do not invest from the market. We get invited as an investor to participate in the most promising deals, just because we bring a lot of added value to the table as well. Now, as a summary, how do we treat our LPs? Well, in a variety of ways, really. We do provide full access to co-investments to our LPs. We do provide full access to our infrastructure, meaning starting from longevity physicians, ending up with scientific advisory board members, sometimes on the personal level. We do conduct very frequent LP meetings where, LPs have chance to connect with founders directly, with scientific advisory board members directly, et cetera. And we really try to keep them on the edge of the most advanced therapies, essentially, and tech out there in the longevity space. So LPs very often treat us as a free university course on longevity, if you wish. So I don't think we have a lot of time, right, to run through the case studies, but I just wanted to mention some that are pretty meaningful for our group. One is Insilico Medicine, of course. So it's an AI for drug discovery unicorn. Initially was invested by our group before we even had a fund in 2017, and has since then yielded, a more than 30x, more like 65x return at this point of time as a deal. An interesting deal from the Fund 1 portfolio, for example, is a Natural Products. It's a company developing drugs in the macrocycle space. Once we have invested, Unnatural has closed close to 2 billion in pharma deals, which is pretty spectacular. If you ask me, it's a very good example, very healthy example of a drug discovery platform right there. An interesting deal from Fund 1 is, of course, Rubedo, and it's a therapeutic company in the longevity space, and a great example of how aging biology was actually squeezed into the traditional narrative of biotech. So Rubedo is the first senescent cell-focused company that is now running clinical trials, phase 1 clinical trials in humans, and we're allowed by FDA to do that because they managed to package a very complicated kind of fundamental piece of science in senescent cells into a clinical program. Also raising very successfully, had a major deal with Beiersdorf pretty fast, and developing really well. A very good example of the diagnostic and preventive company from Fund 1 portfolio is AOA, of course. And AOA is a Boston-based group where they basically became the first group out there to use blood to diagnose very early stage ovarian cancer, stage 1 ovarian cancer, which is the major killer in the female population. They've since then been invested by Danaher and LabCorp, and they're now basically completed the data that would allow them to be certified by FDA and approved by FDA. So it's a major success there as well. Other than that, yeah, I'm happy to address any questions that there are. Longevity is a huge topic. We're not even scratching the surface here. But what you need to know about us, I guess, and it's a kind of the last one-liner that I have, is that we are one of the, if not the most pragmatic investment groups out there when it comes to longevity investing. We've invested a lot of our own capital into Fund 1 to prove the point, really, and to prove that the scientific excellence and due diligence excellence matters. We're now very much seeing this come to life as a bet and as a thesis, and we're pretty confident in our thesis for Fund 2. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sergey. A lot to digest, and I'm sure everyone, that listen in are both impressed by what you've built and are excited to see being built out of Europe. Maybe also just to touch on it personally, like we personally in my family, I lost my sister-in-law to ovarian cancer. So she's part of the 28% who did not survive. Or sorry, the 82% that did not survive. So very tough, of course, and a very important space. So to not close on that line, but I'm sure that everyone who tunes into this will have a similar story in some aspect connected to this. Let me close on a more happy note and ask you 6 quick questions that any longevity person will always get asked by everyone when you're seen as such. You're ready for it, Sergey?
I can attempt for sure. I mean, let's see if you can surprise me with any of these.
I gotta be the annoying guy that asks you these questions. So
Please,
most
please
important,
do.
sleep or exercise? What's most important?
Sweet.
What is the most important thing to do if you want to live long?
Do not do dumb things that science has proven to be harmful to you, and be very basic with your self-loving routine, which is 45 minutes of exercise daily, whatever exercise you're capable of, and just adopt a rule of consuming whole foods. Like if you start there, that will take you a mile.
You're amazing. Now, let me hear you. The dumbest thing you can do then?
Well, something that hurts you big time and you need to pay for it. Let's pick smoking. Smoking is one of the dumbest things you can do.
The core drug that you would say most people would actually get something out of?
The core drug that people will get something out of. I'd say try to avoid drugs to begin with. Like try to live a life where you don't need one. But do you want a specific therapeutic from me? I'd say live life.
If you said now you got to do hormone replacement therapy or you got to do
no, please don't. Just try to be. Look, I know it's not a like a fire type of answer, but it's like raising kids. Okay, so when you have I don't know if you have children, but
I do
I
too.
have I don't, but I see like I have friends who have small children. So, and with children, you can be kind to children in short term and long term, right? And in short term, they want sweets and they want iPad. So, but in long term, that would be actually harmful. So be kind to yourself in the long term, right? Even if it inflicts some sort of, I wouldn't say suffering, right? But some sort of effort and some sort of commitment from you. And that would, again, take you a mile. I'm not the one to suggest hormone replacement therapy. Honestly, I'm not the one.
Final question, Sergey. How old will a 1-year-old today get to be?
Oh, I think the person to live to 120 was already born, to be
100,
completely honest.
not
So,
130, not 140?
I would say, if we do consistently do 120, 125, it's gonna be a big improvement. Because the thing is to prevent things that kill you prematurely, right? That what prevents us from living longer. So we deal with that, we live longer.
Sergey, thank you for making a very serious presentation about LongeVC and taking some stupid questions here in the end. Thank you so much, my friend.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Andreas.
This was their finest hour.
Tear down this wall.
It's more than just an alliance. This is a union of values.
Let's start acting.